All right, Eric, thank you so much for joining me today. How's things?
Everything is fantastic, Vinny. I'm happy to be here. It's been a while for us to get this one scheduled, but I know you're a busy guy, so I'm happy we finally connected.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to it. But I figured a really good place for me to start would be prior to you working in Antarctica. If you could just kind of give me a bit about your background, that would be great.
Sure. Basically, I grew up on Long Island, standard, blue collar family. Did 13 years at Catholic school. I wound up getting involved with some things that people are now talking more publicly about, like the Gateway program, Robert Monroe Institute type stuff was going on with me as a child, and I think probably had something to do with the way that the rest of my life panned out. After my time on Long Island, I was in the submarine service for a very short period. That was certainly an eye-opening experience. After that, I had a pretty good career on the greater Long Island area in regards to plumbing and heating. And from there, I went down to South Pole Station in Antarctica. I spent a year there straight. I unfortunately discovered that there were 3 directed energy weapons platforms. I did go to Washington, D.C. in June of 2023 to testify in 2 separate skips, one for the Senate Intelligence Committee and one for AARO. Since then, prior to and since then, I've been trying to do due diligence in the disclosure community in efforts to get the general population to pay more attention to actionable intelligence versus unsubstantiated speculation.
How did you end up working at South Pole Station then? It sounds like something far removed from anything you were doing previously.
Quite far removed. Basically, the economy in the 2008 era was plummeting, and my business wasn't doing so well on Long Island, so I started looking, broadening my horizons to possibilities, and I just happened to come across a job online that was, looking to hire qualified craftsmen to go down to Antarctica. So I jumped in on it.
I'm not surprised. It was a tough time back in 2008 for sure. So what kind of sort of training and what was the kind of job description, and did you have to have security clearances? What was like the initial setup for the position like?
There were no security clearances involved. My trade skills in and of themselves were the qualifier that got me involved. I think my past experience in the submarine service and some of the training that I had gone through successfully in that program promoted me to the front of the line, so to say. Prior to full deployment down to the ice, we pit stopped in Centennial, Colorado. We had Wilderness Medicine Institute first responder training. We had, I guess you'd say, psychological training by Dr. Nicoletti, who was, at the time, I believe he was the head of the Los Angeles Police Department and the Denver Broncos in regards to their psychiatric services. So he came in and gave us an education on, what that environment does to, people mentally and how to help with them, coping strategies and things like that to get them through the winter season. It's very challenging. We also went to I believe it was the Rocky Mountain Fire Brigade. Rocky Mountain Fire Academy, where we received team building and skills training in, full-blown firefighting, full bunker gear on SCBAs. That was actually really interesting because the program we were being trained on was hose teams, like how to fight fires with hoses, standard firefighting stuff. But partially through the course, I was being kind of considered to be made into a team lead for the fire brigade. And in that process, I started paying more attention and looking at the blueprints of the facility. And it dawned on me there's no hose stations anywhere at the South Pole Station. So I went up my chain of command. I said, what are we doing here? I said, all of my training has always been, we train for real. We train for reality. I said, we're sitting here putting teams together for hose drills. We're never going to touch a hose. I said, this is absurd. So we spoke to the administrators at the academy and had them very rapidly rewrite an entire program so that we can do all of our work with fire extinguishers, which is what we do have on scene. So we trained up on how to make small teams and breach hot rooms and tackle fires just off of, rotating extinguisher teams.
And before you actually got onto the ice and down to the South Pole, were you told about any other programs that were happening down there? Anything to avoid? Was there anything, that they kind of pre-warned you about?
No, not at all, actually. We kind of got dropped in pretty blind.
So what would an average day have been like then in your position? Because correct me if I'm wrong, you were there for a year, am I right?
That is correct. I was there for 366 days straight on the continent. So an average day was pretty much just fighting Mother Nature. As a tradesman, the environment obviously is extremely harsh, and providing life support systems so that people can exist in that environment is overcoming a lot of Mother Nature. So we spend most of the days doing boring stuff, preventative maintenance, checking things, just going around and more or less inspecting and looking at every building on the property, the elevated station being the largest of the facilities, but there were certainly other, what we refer to as outbuildings.
So during those 366 days, did you suspect anything untoward was happening down there, or was it afterwards, after you left the ice, that you realized what had been happening?
Well, I definitely went into the arena with my eyes open, like kind of thinking like be like a sponge, observe, pay attention. And to be honest, because Raytheon was the hiring contractor, I had suspicions that there might be more going on when a military industrial complex contractor got the bid, for providing maintenance at a science facility. It did seem odd to me. But, present at the facility, it just seemed like a lot of standard bureaucracy and red tape and, wasteful spending by the government, that the stuff that people would absolutely consider typical.
Now, what can you tell me about the IceCube Neutrino Observatory? First of all, what it's alleged to be, and then maybe you can go into what you believe it to be as well.
Absolutely. As presented at face value from the science capacity, this is a passive receiving device. The neutrinos make it through the array. The neutrino comes in contact with the nucleus of the water molecules, and a reaction occurs. The nucleus is disintegrated. The neutrino is disintegrated. A blue flash of light known as Cherenkov radiation goes off, which is what triggers the digital optical modules. And after the destruction of the two other items, a muon is created and or released, however, the right terminology is. So that's effectively what they're presenting the science as, and that, this absurd amount of money being spent and the absurd amount of labor in the harshest of environments somehow, justifies the cause. But what I'm finding out, the information that I put out, that I provided documentation, went and testified, gave the information to the government, was that the IceCube neutrino detector also has the capacity to output. That's the part that they're not discussing publicly, which brings us into a whole other conversation of what technologies actually exist on this planet. Who are the people that are in possession of them? What are they actually doing with them, since they've secreted them away and are currently operating in an unregulated capacity?
Who runs that observatory? Is it a private contractor or is it military?
Very interesting question. It's hard to tell. That was one of the conversations that I had with the folks at the Senate Intelligence Committee. Once I passed on all of the information, the conversation shifted to, now that we are aware that there are rogue factions operating without oversight in facilities like this and other places, what do we do about it? And that's where we are right now. This is the conversation that should be being had publicly in the disclosure community, because what's really going on is a big smoke screen of unsubstantiated, speculated information being put in the spotlight, being regurgitated from fake whistleblower and fake whistleblower and fake whistleblower across the board as they pat each other on the back and swap credentials with each other. They haven't provided any actionable intelligence. When they're done talking, there's no action for the crowd to get moving on. It's a clear indication that there's a problem with the intelligence if there's nothing that can be done with it. I've provided a location. I've provided the documentation for technologies. There's something that can be done. The question is, why is nobody doing anything? Why is the entire community uber focused on stuff that we can't do anything about?
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned there you provided documentation. What sort of stuff was it? Was it classified information, and what kind of detail did it have in it?
It was a page from the actual operator's manual. Like once something gets built, there's a system and they have to have instructions on how this works and this item does that. So what I provided was the proof from the operator's manual about the DOMs and their capacity to transmit at up to 2,047 volts each times 5,160 DOMs, effectively making this the world's largest and most powerful phased array transmitter.
So could you tell me about any incidents in particular that occurred due to that device, that weapon?
Absolutely. In the season that I was there, the IceCube neutrino detector, as well as the elevated station, were transitioning from construction to operations and maintenance. And in February of 2011, when the IceCube lab first came online, basically in transmit mode, there was 2 friendly fire incidents where Christchurch, New Zealand was hit. And it was communicated to me that they were friendly fire incidents. Obviously, that's questionable. That could be misinformation. There was an email that came out from Hillary Clinton shortly after the event where she apparently was, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm terrible with full quotes, but she said something to the effect of, that she was happy that the earthquake occurred and on cue.
Have you spoken to anyone else that's been aware of this, whether you work in Antarctica or in development or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. I talked to all kinds of people about this, and it's one of the things that's intriguing to me, as I'm here deciphering my experience, and I have skin in the game. I'm showing up to the disclosure community with actionable intelligence, knocking on doors, trying to communicate with people and see how this information is received and who moves it where. What's amazing to me is the vast majority of people don't want to talk about this. I've had people reach out to me, but I've had Ross Coulthart, I've had David Grush, I've had Jake Barber. All these people have reached out to me through back channels and attempted to jump my coattails. Oh, Eric, we support what you're doing and we want to help you out. Your story is like our story. This happens all the time, is that people try to interconnect like a group pat on the back. But I refuse to do that. My story stands on its own. I don't need to align with other people to make my information more valuable. So because I will not give the proverbial pat on the back to other people's testimonies, because it doesn't really stand on its own. I don't want to associate with people that cannot prove what they're saying. It doesn't mean that it's not true. I'm not going either way. I don't have to affiliate. But it's still interesting to me that I get to observe the intentions of others constantly in this activity. So this was right after the event in Washington, D.C., 2023, through one of the other whistleblowers who is engaging with these people, which goes to show how this works. If you'll pat me on the back, I'll help you out. We'll all support each other. I don't play those games, but these are the games I'm observing going on in the community.
Yeah, I think what's important is that Congress actually does something about the fact that you met with the committee and spoke with AARO. Which one came first?
I believe. Well, let me think now. It was the same weekend. I'm just trying to think officially which one I went to first. I think I went to the Senate Intelligence Committee building first, but I could totally be wrong. I forget.
Yeah, because you came out, I think, publicly at a kind of press conference? Was it the one arranged by Dr. Stephen Greer?
I had technically been public for years at that point.
Okay, but it just sort of came to the masses then, let's say, who became very aware of your story. So was your meeting with the Senate? You said, was it the Intelligence Committee? Did you say? I'm sorry, I keep.
It was the Senate Intelligence Committee, correct? Yeah.
So what was that meeting like? What kind of questions did they ask you? Obviously, you provided them with information and evidence. Did they give you any promises? Did they, sound like they were actually going to do anything?
They absolutely did sound very positive in the exchange. I had brought with me a former crew member as well, was in the room. There was, to the best of my recollection, there was about 6 people in that skiff. One of them was some sort of a scientist who was kind of running the whole conversation and interpreting for the other folks in the room. He seemed to be very aware of the things that I was talking about, and they seemed to need a lot of explaining. But he seemed to speak their language and disseminate the information rapidly. He and I had a wonderful conversation. I just started laying things out, explaining what I knew, the 3 different systems that I came across, what I suspected was going on, what the potentials were, what possible power sources were, what potential locations were for those power sources with maps and all kinds of stuff. And I laid it all out. Again, this is actionable intelligence. Like, here, guys, this is the spot. Send someone. Not like everything and it's frustrating to see all of this stuff in the community where there's nothing that can be done, but everybody's enamored by the conversation. It seems to me a big smokescreen. I think what's really going on and what people are going to find out is that this technology that everybody thinks is off-world exclusive has been in the hands of mankind, and now many factions over many decades have learned to play with these things, and the last thing they want to do is be caught with their hand in the cookie jar and all the liability that comes with it for all of the decades of subterfuge. So they're making this wonderful smoke screen with folks like Jake Barber, who, of his own testimony on the Jesse Michaels podcast, stated that he went to the same event that I was a whistleblower at, but he was on the other side. He stated that he was there to gather intelligence to forward to the FBI to potentially make arrests of the whistleblowers. Well, I'm one of them. Am I supposed to trust Jake Barber now because he claims to have switched sides? I don't. Put yourself in my shoes. This guy straight up stated he was there to work against me. Now he's saying he's on the same side. I don't buy it. It just seems like counterintelligence. He's trying to commandeer the narrative, especially because he's just regurgitating stuff that people were told, that people testified to in AARO. It appears that AARO simply was gathering a whole bunch of testimony from actual witnesses, took it, gathered it up as a script, handed it out to their actors, and asked them to go, play the scene. AARO certainly is not being honest in the equation. I mean, I went and testified about everything going on in Antarctica. All of the information that I gave them was information that I had already been public on. I had already testified about directed energy weapons publicly. I had already testified about the negative impact on my crew who is suffering Havana syndrome-like symptoms. Well, when the AARO summary report came out and they went public, they literally stated on TV that there were reports of victims with Havana syndrome-like symptoms on every single continent except for Antarctica. How can they make that statement with me existing and having testified?
Yeah, it doesn't add up at all. Tell me about that experience with AARO, because I've spoken to other people who have testified to them and I've certainly had mixed reactions. Some people saying that they had a good experience, that AARO seemed genuinely interested, took a lot of notes. Others, they just felt like they were just being completely, brushed off and pushed aside. So did you meet with anybody high up? Like, how did it kind of pan out?
Basically, I found that those guys were very interested, for sure. They seemed like they were coming from an angle where a lot of my information was either like new to them, over their head, or shocking, so to say. They were certainly, you know what? I went to them second because they were not absorbing it as well as the other gentleman. I remember yeah, so I spoke to the Senate Intelligence Committee first, where the information was received smoothly. AARO, it seemed like they were having they were a bit more challenged to understand what I was presenting, even though they were nice about it. When that conversation, when the testimony ended, the two gentlemen that were investigating me asked me a question. They said, Eric, what do you recommend we do when we take information like yours and other folks' information and we run it up the chain of command and they do nothing? And I immediately said, you should quit your job and try working for the right team.
How do you see this going forward? I mean, you mentioned there about this technology being around for decades. It's something that we've developed. Do you think there is any connection at all with off-world or non-human intelligence?
I don't doubt it at all. I am not trying to discount the possibility of the off-world activity and the technologies. I'm not trying to do that. Whether we back-engineered it or discovered it ourselves, to me, kind of almost doesn't matter. It's like a battle of semantics. How did we get this technology means less to me than how we're applying and hiding it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on like the historic stories, let's say, about UFOs and Antarctica? If you look at Project High Jump and all the kind of conspiracies around things like that, what are your thoughts on that?
I think there's absolutely things to consider. I just believe that most of the topic of Antarctica is phooey, being put out by shills that are trying to control the narrative. There are certainly people that are doing great work in the topic of Antarctica, like Daniel List of Dark Journalist is the only person I know that really seems to be on the topic correctly and making the right connections. I had the privilege of meeting, actually, John Warner IV. I stayed at his place in the Watergate Hotel when I went to Washington, D.C. to testify. And one of the things that John shared with me, his father, John Warner III, was previously the Secretary of the Navy. So he was in charge of Operation Deep Freeze. And he told his son, John, who relayed to me, that the submarine activities in Antarctica were, boring tunnels with steam drills and things to have under ice activities. And when he asked his father why they were doing this, his father said, space operations. So I'm not opposed to a lot of shenanigans going on in Antarctica. I actually believe it's way worse than what people are considering. And these smokescreen stories are doing well at disinforming and misinforming people as to what's really going on.
I love Contact in the Desert. I think of it sort of like the UFO Woodstock.
I like Contact in the Desert.
The legends of ufology are here.
The real action is the activity and conversation that happens behind the scenes.
They network with each other in the restaurant, in the bar, in the spaces. Contact in the Desert isn't just a conference, it's a community.
Do you think there are potentially other countries involved in this, like on some sort of bigger global system?
Absolutely, because I do not believe that we, the people of this planet, are actually just simply suffering under piss-poor politics. I believe the political parties of my country, your country, or they're bought and sold. There's bigger problems that we, the people, need to pay attention to. Our politicians are puppets.
Are you willing to name any of the countries that you would say may be associated with this also?
I would start with the list of countries that have signed the Antarctic Treaty. I mean, I don't know all of them, but it's the usual suspects.
So let's just touch upon this Antarctic space connection. What do you think the bigger picture is then? Is there some end goal with all of this?
Oh, absolutely. It's huge. This is huge. The big picture starts way back with the Admiral Byrd expeditions and one of the members by the name of Lloyd Berkner. Lloyd Berkner basically came back from Antarctica and was trying to hit up the U.S. government for funding to start a program so that we can pay attention to the things that are coming and going in the upper atmosphere on and off the planet. That was his intention. They wound up giving him seed money to start something known as the Geophysical Year, which is quite the peculiar title. But it's the umbrella that science monies were distributed and that international coalitions were formed under the banner of the Geophysical Year. And that's what got all the science activity started down in Antarctica, the United States Antarctic Program, the National Science Foundation, all of this stuff off of Berkner's direction, but not under the original banner that he was calling for it. He was, transparent. Hey, there's stuff going on. Well, they just squished it down. They turned it into science projects at face value. But in reality, it seems like there's a lot of other shenanigans going on down in Antarctica by many different factions from many different countries.
Where do we go from here with your particular case, with this IceCube neutrino detector, whatever it is? How does this pan out from here on out? Because it doesn't seem like anything's being done. You've done what you needed to do. You've testified to the relevant people, but it seems to have just hit a brick wall. What are you hoping for, further down the line?
I guess what I was hoping for was some folks to do their homework. I mean, basically what I thought would occur when I originally got into the disclosure community was that I would drop this information and well-intentioned researchers would pick it up and run with it, was what I thought would occur. So all I've ever really been battling with is, I guess, first and foremost, let me jump back. Mark Twain has stated many times that it takes a higher level of intellect to consider an idea that they do not yet support. And I feel like that's kind of lost in society today. The split second somebody doesn't support something, they just start attacking it with their own belief system. So all I'm asking people to do is I appreciate that the information that I'm putting out there is lofty to some people's perspectives. But if you first consider it, and then you do due diligence in looking into the technologies and the research and the science that has been involved in these things for so many decades, it starts to leave a trail of breadcrumbs. And you start to have to consider, well, if they've been working on researching this technology for 40 years and investing billions of dollars, well, where are they at with it right now? Who does have possession of it? What are the things that it can do besides the things that they're presenting it to do? That's one of the things with technology. I mean, people need to start realizing is that, if you build a gun, it's a gun. You pull the trigger, it shoots. It only does one thing. But when we start getting into, electronic warfare, I mean, just think of all the things that we can make that present as one thing, but can do a laundry list of other things. I mean, people have to start considering that, we all know there's super secret stuff going on. Well, where is it happening? Do you think that they put, like back in the day on Long Island, they had Nike nuclear missile sites strewn about the communities? Did they tell everyone, like, hey, look, under that box is a nuclear missile? No, they lie. And they say, that's a Air National Guard training facility backup reserve location. So obviously there has to be a lot of nefarious stuff going on in this world where they're straight up lying and presenting it as something fantastic. And if we don't start looking into these things, we're just going to keep suffering under the ignorance of the disinformation, the misinformation game. We're going to tolerate the people that have been monopolizing these technologies for decades because they're secreted, they're unregulated. A lot of people say, well, if they had these technologies, if this was true, they would be, it would be public because they would want to make so much money selling it to us. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. The money's in the monopoly. It would be like if we didn't have ships, right? If we didn't have ships and it was a secret thing, do you think the shipbuilders and the shipping industry are really going to be interested in letting the whole world know about their secret, right? So this is where we're at contemporarily. We have new ships. We have all kinds of technology involved in the world of new ships. The government's not going to tell us about it. The monopolizers do not want this information getting out. And it seems obvious to me in the disclosure community because it's being run by federal agents, former counterintelligence operations, and heavily funded by venture capitalists. I mean, is this the holy trinity of truth that the world deserves?
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I think disclosure could come from many different angles, but one thing that you mentioned in there, which I wanted to pick up on, was other technologies or other uses for this technology. And something that you've mentioned previously before is frequency-based mind control. Could you expand on that a bit for me?
Yeah, I mean, the technology is all over the place. There's many ways now, technologically, for me to, for argument's sake, put a voice in your head. One of them is a company called Genesis. They used to go by the title LRAD. They're on YouTube right now. They have a corporate page where they market their products. Their device could simply, like if you were in a crowd of ornery folks and they wanted to take this device and utilize it to fire acoustically over the crowd, they can set that thing so the whole crowd hears it, or they can dial it in so you're the only recipient. That's an existing technology. So now if you were in that crowd and they start talking just to you, are you simply not hearing voices in your head compared to what's going on around you?
So what sort of distances would these be working on, though? You know, if you've got something in Antarctica, could it be reaching mainland US, or would there be just other substations or sub devices elsewhere?
That is a wonderful question because it seems like different systems have different ranges, some being line of sight, some not being line of sight. But it appears that this research has been going on for a very long time. I mean, that's the greatest question. So I believe this particular one that I mentioned, the LRAD, I believe is line of sight, and I believe can stretch for thousands of yards.
Do you think there are some on a grander scale, though? It's a really, I guess it's endless. The possibilities are endless.
But exactly,
really,
the possibilities are endless because we have to look at each of these things as almost like an individual problem as its own component. Pardon me. But then we have to look at things like, well, when we start to add things together, right? So what if we took one of these things and we mounted it to a drone and we flew it over a community, and we just start influencing and we start, oh, that person over there, we want them to think more of this. With AI and stuff nowadays, like here's where we snowball this, right? I'm speculating right now, but I'm considering things. My mind is open to considering what detriment is around the corner so we can prepare for it. This is just being a human being.
No, I think that's important.
Yeah. What if we take one of these systems, Vinny, and we mount it to a drone and we fly it over a community and we integrate it with AI systems that we all know exist, right? So theoretically, I could record your voice right now, right? And I could get a sample of you. I could then move that through an AI and I could start typing in things. Make Vinny say this. And it'll manipulate your voice. Well, what if I then decided I want to hassle Vinny? I need Vinny to think a little differently. So I proceed to set this system up so that it's now pumping your voice into your head, but my script.
I see, right.
So now if I want to get you to do something, it's just a matter of time. I just go full court press on, and we also know there's other systems, right? So now all of a sudden your Facebook feed, they change the algorithm. They do things, and these are all manipulations. These are the dials of the machine contemporarily that can be wielded. Dr. James Giordano did a great presentation where he discusses that the future of warfare, the battlefield is the mind. And we have to start looking at all of the weapons of warfare that can work in that regard on that battlefield. So all these social networks, all of these technologies, in reality, somebody could cut a check to the right people and work really well at getting to modify your behaviors and activities.
I mean, the implications are so scary, but what can the average individual do about any of this? It just seems that these corporations and governments are just so big. They've got the money, they've got the power. Like, how do the masses do anything to avoid this? Further down the line, especially.
I think awareness matters. When people start to realize all the different angles that they're trying to be impressed upon by, to become more resistant. I like the term to become unmanageable. A lot of what's going on in society right now has just become a management process through these techniques and technologies. And I would say we all just witnessed the application of this stuff through the COVID process. I mean, in hindsight, that was that was battlefield of the mind, and most minds lost. Precedent has been set. That was use of many of the technologies to manage people, which is a form of mind control. Because on one day, nobody wanted to wear a mask. And then all of a sudden, after the application of intention, technology, monies, all of a sudden everyone changed their mind. It's the weirdest thing. The whole planet was agreeing about something for the first time ever. We need masks. We need more masks. You know why I wear a mask? That was the mind control I kept witnessing, right? So how I mentioned to you about the technology being able to put a thought out, right? COVID, perfect example. They want everyone to wear a mask, but they have to personalize it. So it's almost like they apply an AI that goes out against everybody. What is Vinny's weakness? Vinny doesn't want to wear a mask, but what can we mine out of Vinny? And then just for hypothetical situation, maybe it turns out Vinny's got a grandmother who's in internment, and in order for Vinny to get in there, he's got to wear a mask. So Vinny yields. Oh, I just want to see my grandma. What I saw during COVID was everybody basically giving me the same canned speech, the program. I wear the mask because, and then fill in the blank. Mission accomplished. The mission was send out the technology, send out the techniques, do the full court press from every direction. The goal is find a way to get everyone to wear a mask. And it worked. It looks like the mining of information went out, the application of pressure through all the dials that could be manipulated, in hindsight, functioned great.
Again, that's scary. It really is. It really is.
It already happened. We already failed to resist that level of attack on society. My concern is that there's a lot of technologies that are researchable, referenceable, decades. My concern is what's the next fake thing. I believe with all the shenanigans we're seeing in disclosure, we're being set up for some sort of false off-world alien activity, which is simply going to be shenanigans caused by humans who have wild technology.
I mean, we've had warnings of that sort of thing for quite a long time now from certain, researchers and individuals. So, I mean, anything can happen, I suppose, at this stage. But, you've been speaking about this now for some time, but what sort of pushback, or have you had any threats, intimidation, anything like that? Because, surely these people are hearing what you're saying and not wanting you to say it.
Threats and intimidation are pretty much nonstop. I get a lot of pushback. There was an actual altercation in Washington, D.C. in June of 2023 after the National Press Club event. Dr. Greer was, I guess, almost assaulted upon departing the building. And then the debacle, I guess, rolled out into the street. And I got involved with a couple of guys that, were claiming were going to destroy me or something. I'm still here, you noticed.
What about from this sort of scientific community? People, have you spoken with individuals who say, "Oh no, the ice cube neutrino detector simply is a detector"? Have you actually had like direct conversations or interactions with scientists?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's some people that say I'm a raging lunatic, I'm an idiot. What the hell could I know about anything? And then there's other folks that are like, you're absolutely right. That's amazing. This is a different kind of, it's a different kind of technology. It's more advanced. People go, well, that defies the standard model of physics. I mean, there's tons of stuff that defies the standard model of physics, or we wouldn't be trying to look for new things. So it's the conversations seem to go well with people that are open to considering that things might be different than what they previously thought, which is, for me, the perfect angle of attack on this. Is we have to be open to things different than we currently understand. We have, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, folks, but we also have to appreciate that there are very evil people on this planet that are very happy to do bad things and take advantage of the good folks. I always think of that line in the Batman movie where Alfred says to, Bruce Wayne, there's some people that just want to see the world burn. So how do we, the good people, how do we deal with that reality exists when we're mostly ignoring it?
What I wanted to ask was the mainstream media, for decades and decades, we've always tried to rely on good news reporters doing good work and investigating and bringing stories to the public. How do you feel the mainstream media has dealt with both your story in particular, but also this bigger picture sort of surrounding the disclosure topic?
I think the current state of the union for the media would be best put like this. How do I put it? The mass media is wholly corrupted. Nobody would really argue with that statement. But if I follow it up with the internet is part of the mass media, people start flipping out. Like, don't tell me that the internet information stream has been bought and sold just like the mass media. How could it not, folks? I mean, it's actually cheaper, I think, if we run the numbers. What did it used to cost the CIA to get, CNN to run the stories they want, and Fox News, and all these other channels that had massive market share? I think it cost them a ton of money. I think now that those channels have plummeted, they don't even need to invest a fraction of what they used to command in the same way that they did. And I think they've reallocated that funding into the podcasting community, because as if all of these podcasters out there are, simply these one-man bands, producing content at a level that would take no less than a 20-man editing team. People that really do this realize how hard it is. If you're cranking out 3 videos a week that are produced, edited, that takes your whole life. That's a lot of work. I'm learning as I go. So when I see these podcasters out there that are acting like, they're a single thing, and then I book for an interview with them, and then next thing I know, I'm getting reached out to by the producer, I'm getting reached out to by the travel booking agent, I'm being reached out to by the makeup artist. It's like, what's going on right now? Well, who's funding you? And this is rampant in the community. The conventions. I say the internet's wholly corrupted. Why wouldn't the CIA host an alien convention? Can they not afford it? Technically, it looks to me like there's a big return on investment on these things. Could they be cutouts that are cash cows for them because they have a history of doing that too? I mean, it seems like a win-win. You get to have a cash cow business. You get to net in all of the people that you need to control. You get to disseminate the information in the way that you desire fits best. I mean, if the CIA could afford one UFO convention, could they afford 2, 3? Could they be funding all of them? Is that possible? I wonder. But I'm sure, you know what? I'm just speculating. Probably all of them are unaffiliated with any alphabet agency, because if the CIA was doing it, would the DIA do it? Would the Aussie version be involved? Would the British version be involved? Where do these battle lines fall in regards to which factions are applying effort to controlling the narrative that we, the people, are suffering under in ignorance, while they all play ball and try to monopolize the technologies and make the most money unbeknownst to us, we the people, as we're just running around trying to pay our mortgages. Well, we have, counterintelligence agents, feigning to be whistleblowers. We have red team operatives trying to infiltrate disclosure events to facilitate arrests. And then apparently when they fail, they claim to have switched teams. They're not infiltrating deeper. They're good guys now.
I think a lot of the thing as well is that we've seen these people come forward, these other whistleblowers. And I think, with the limited information that we have, I think, is it not right to just see how things play out over time?
No, I think it's wildly inappropriate. I think what's going on in the community contemporarily is that it's unfortunate that like you said before, the journalists that would normally, do the right work, do the investigation. We don't have that anymore. But what we do have is a bunch of people that want to get YouTube rich and become millionaires and act like they're some sort of reporter or journalist, but without any of the integrity. You'll hear a lot of people state, like, I just put everybody on air and I leave it up to the audience. Well, what if the news did that, right? We'd get mad. But now what's truly just simply entertainment, but feigning as some sort of research and journalism, is a complete detriment to the stream of truth, because we, the people, basically are downstream of the podcasters, and we are now suffering under them allowing anyone on the microphone, doing no due diligence or any vetting. So they're muddying the waters of truth because they're not figuring out what's crap. They're throwing everything into the stream, and then we, the people, are downstream trying to filter out what's good information and bad information. And in that process, heaven forbid anybody points upstream and goes, hey, that guy over there's throwing a lot of crap in the river. And everybody goes, how dare you? How dare you? Everybody has a right to say what they. But no, that's not really how life works. If someone's spreading crap in the community, I think that we will gain more ground by collectively working together to point out those that are slinging shit, and will accomplish a lot more faster. The water will clear up faster by going upstream and getting rid of the ones muddying the water faster than if we try to filter it out on the back end.
I think we've seen the problem is with this community, though, that it just doesn't seem like there'll ever be a time where we all pull together for the greater good, even though looking at the bigger picture further down the line, or the end of the line, is that we all kind of do want to get to that same end goal, but it just doesn't seem that everyone's able to get on board on the same page. It's a shame.
Yeah, and it's the weirdest thing as you're saying that, because in my brain I'm thinking like, yes, everybody needs to get on the same page about division. We still need to divide out the bad. That takes effort. I get it. Like, that's the thing that people don't want to do, because it's almost like there's a bar fight going on and you just don't want to pay attention. At some point it's going to come across the bar and hit you in the face, and if you don't pick a side soon, you're going to get run over by the mob. Like, the activity is already happening. The war is going on. The battle for truth is certainly ongoing.
It's been a long battle, and it still seems it's like it's going to be a.
Yeah, look at the JFK files release. What a joke that was, right? So it was a giant nothing burger, and everybody's like, "Yep, that makes sense." Well, hold on a second. Trump's last term, he didn't release it with some sort of a statement to the effect of, like, if you saw what was in there, you wouldn't release it either. Well, where's that part he was talking about? That seems to have been omitted. Where's this part that he was talking about was so foul that he couldn't release it? I'm not seeing that. I think we might have got lied to by the government again, maybe.
Same goes with the drone situation. Trump saying he was, going to release all this information on it, and then we get the FAA approved drones story. I mean, it all just doesn't add up. I guess we're seeing a repeating pattern happening here.
Yeah, absolutely, and it seems to be revolving around hiding a conversation on technology. It comes right back around to, wow, I wonder what technology really exists. So now we have. They just said the other day that they're going to be. We're going to have the 6th generation fighter, the X-47, and then they stated that it's been in use for 5 years, pretty much being under construction for 10 or 20 years. So how much further are we going to go into the future to where we just find out that the 47 was just like the F-117, that we didn't learn about it publicly until the 1990s, when in reality it had been in operation in the field since the early 70s. Right? And we had Richard Doty running around telling people, no, it's a UFO. We don't have that kind of stuff. Right? That's what we keep hearing. For the last 2 years, we keep hearing from whistleblowers, we don't have that kind of stuff. Well, hold on a second. For 5 years, we had the X-47 apparently. What does it do? I'm sure they'll tell us exactly what it does, right? Something tells me it does UFO type stuff. Something tells me it's probably been in active duty for 20 years. Something tells me there's been Richard Doty type characters running around. Every single someone that saw an X-47 would have a Doty character show up and go, you totally saw a UFO. It's all UFOs. They don't have that. We don't have that. It's all lies. 2 weeks ago, we didn't have the technology. Now we got the X-47B. Doesn't that change the conversation for everything that everybody said up until this point? Right? Look at what the F-117 was capable of in the early 70s. Do you think the general population could wrap their heads around that back then? Or do you think that we could have effectively utilized that platform to convince a lot of people that they were aliens flying around?
Well, listen, Eric, we're about to hit the hour mark. I'm going to take you back to Antarctica for the last 2 questions. Okay. The first one, it may be a bit obvious, the question, but I'm still intrigued by your answer. If you knew what you knew now before going to do your job in Antarctica, would you still do it? And if so, what would you do differently being down there?
As much as I have no desire to go back there, if you're going to put it that way, I would feel obliged to, and I would go back and dig deeper and further and find out more. It's actually funny. So people have given me junk about that because they've criticized me. They're like, "How you're a liar, you're a hypocrite." You said that you never wanted to go to Antarctica, but you volunteered to go. Yeah, those can both be true statements. Yeah, I didn't want to go. But of course, I had to volunteer because I wasn't conscribed. I mean, it's just semantics at this point. I volunteered to go because I took a job because I couldn't find any other ones. I didn't want to go to that one, but I did. So I wouldn't want to go back, but I would. I would feel obliged.
Yeah, no, I thought it might be along those lines, but I wasn't quite sure. And my next question was going to be, would you go back?
I would not want to go back for, the experience, so to say. I know what it's like to be at the South Pole for a year, which, according to the sun, is 1 day because it just goes up and down once in 365 days. So that's pretty much all there is to see there. If you've spent the long day doing a second one, you're going to see the same thing.
Right. Well, listen, Eric, before I let you go, please tell everyone where they can keep up with your ongoing work, research efforts, and things like that.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that, Vinny. The best way to keep in contact with me and the information that I'm trying to get out there, folks, would be on my website at deciphering.tv. I speak to folks like Vinny, and we have wonderful conversations. I put stuff up there, and it's just me trying to do due diligence. I will be going this weekend to Houston, Texas, to be on with Chad Robichaud of the Resilient Show podcast. And then in a couple of weeks, I will be headed to Denver to be with George Norrie, is going to have me sit down with him. So both of the pre-interviews have been going really well, and I'm very happy that it seems like more and more people are opening up to the fact that disclosure up until this point has pretty much been a counterintelligence operation, and we the people need to figure out what to do next, because this is unsavory currently.
Eric, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Please hang around for 2 minutes after we've finished recording, but I wanted to thank you so much for coming on and agreeing to speak with me.
You got it. Thank you, Vinny.